Hi, good afternoon. I'm Rick Wenham. I'm the former head of the Met Police CVU. This is Rob Beckers, my former deputy head of the Met Police CVU. There we go. So for those of you that were here last year or that have seen us in any of the previous presentations we've done, in 2022, we released the commercial vehicle unit Toolbox Talk into the industry, initially designed for about 1,200-1,500 tipper drivers because they were our compliance nightmare in London. We have delivered it now internationally to north of 70,000 transport professionals. And as a result, we became the most successful roads policing unit in the UK for road death reduction. We contributed to, thank you. We contributed to a 62% reduction in commercial vehicle related road death in London and sustained that for nearly 4 years. That was tracked to a 12% national reduction in commercial vehicle related road death nationally, and we could trace it to where we had delivered the Toolbox Talks. As a result of what we did, promoting engagement, you may have seen us. There's a lot more of me then. You may have seen us in conferences where historically the legal profession and the police have locked horns in court and a PI. But ultimately, we're working for the same outcome. It is safe operation of commercial vehicles, keeping your vehicles on the road, and when it comes into future-proofing, keeping your company in profit, because critical incidents can massively affect reputation. Reputation affects your commercial viability. Oh, it is sensitive, isn't it? Rob and I were awarded the National Police Chiefs Council Outstanding Contribution to Roads Policing in 2024 by Chief Constable Joe Shiner. And I think you'll agree, had we saved deprived children on the estates 2% of death, let alone 62%, Rob and I probably have a few letters after our names. However, here we are. Metropolitan Police will go and say we are struggling for all these things, sense of community, building confidence and trust and engagement. And we led what was the largest engagement and road safety programme outside of counter-terrorism policing. So you think we'd be awarded with accolades and that, and they shut us down. In March this year, the commercial vehicle unit no longer exists. Other police forces up and down the country are following the Met's example, as is historic, and shutting down standalone commercial vehicle units, which is, for commercial vehicle operators, really, really dangerous because you've now got a skills gap. Because you've got a cop that is quite happy chasing a Range Rover up and down the road, responding to an HGV incident where you've got a piece of plant, for example, that was mentioned to me this morning, and arresting the driver driving a piece of plant because he hasn't got an HGV licence. I'm quite happy to take that one on board. But as a result of it, last Christmas, in excess of 100 people had Christmas dinner with their families as a result of the work we've done. That's how it reflects in real people terms. 100 people statistically should be dead. They're not. We have learned lessons from it, and this is the part of future-proofing. So beyond the blue lights, as soon as the dust has settled after that thump and that crunch, and your driver sitting behind the wheel going, I'm not having a good day. I'm not going to say it because we've got an audience. How you manage that post-incident crisis is critical to how you move forward as a business and how you move forward as an operator. So, any day, any given road near you. I'm not going to give the warning because it's not as gruesome as some of the ones I have shown. Cab footage from a vehicle, it can be any vehicle, HGV, light goods vehicle. From the noises in the room, everyone saw him. The driver, however, was focused on the chap crossing right to left, didn't see the bloke on the front near side, was a fatal collision. Now is the time, if you have a panic button on your desk, that button that says do not press is set for emergency, smack it through the wood. A fatal collision is, by means, a really, really long-winded, very intrusive investigation. It is akin to homicide investigation because someone has died. We have to compile a report and an investigation on behalf of His Majesty's Coroner, who is the highest sitting judge in the land. The Coroner overrules Crown Court judges. And you will have heard of the golden hour principle of investigation. Your best evidence is captured within the first hour, of an investigation from whether that be from the shot being fired or the bumper being bent. That golden hour is critical. Your driver, he's sitting there and all of those emotions, he's traumatised, he's confused, he's alone, scared and anxious because he's having the worst day at the wheel. Forget the golden hour. That does not exist because that driver needs controlling the second the wheels stop motion. That driver needs a wraparound straight away. And I want to make it really, really clear from this point of view, we are not protecting drivers from the judicial process. There are drivers that will go to prison because they have done wrong. We are not saying that driver needs protecting and moving away from it. They just need progressing and protecting so the investigation can be progressed, be diligent, and not rely on human error. So here's your risk. Your driver is the risk. He's at risk to himself and all of the factors that come into it. Driver's licence and driver's freedom, massively at risk. Death by dangerous driving no longer has an upper sentencing limit. You can get life in prison. People are getting longer for driving offences where someone has died than they have for murdering people now, because that's the way the sentencing guidelines go. As a company, your finances are at risk and your reputation are at risk. They both juxtapose with each other, and that is how you're going to move forward. So we call it the platinum 10 minutes, because those 10 minutes between that 999 call being made and generally the first emergency responders getting there, that is when we need to really take control of that incident. So the first thing to really understand is collision response and your rights. And this is part of our toolbox talk that sort of opened the door with colleagues in the legal profession, because we're actually singing from the same song sheet. And Rob and I have both had challenging conversations.
Well, I think that's fair to say, yeah.
With some of our detective colleagues, because apparently we're all on the same side and you're telling the driver not to talk. No, we're not. Everyone at the roadside will give breath and drugs samples, including police officers, and I make absolutely no apologies. I have arrested 2 of my colleagues in uniform for drink drive, driving a police car, crashed into a lamppost. Make no apologies for it. If you fail it, there is no 2 ways about it. You will be arrested, including police officers. That should be the only real rationale for arrest at the roadside. At the roadside, you have to give details under Section 170 of the Road Traffic Act, and these are mandated details. It's not an interview. You have to provide your name, address, date of birth, and who owns that vehicle, even if that company's name is all over it, because that's what the Road Traffic Act says you have to provide. So these processes are mandated by law. Section 170 is not an interview. Those 4 questions are not the time to clam up and go no comment, because they will get you arrested. You have to answer those questions. Refusal to provide or providing positive samples is also an offence. The breath test machines we use have been formulated on people with very, very close to end-of-life lung conditions with almost half capacity and 1 lung, and you will be able to provide a sample. So the people that you're sitting there going, I can't do it. Yeah, you can. Sooner or later, your helpful traffic officer in his white hat will turn up. And they'll say things like this: hello, mate, I see you're shaking up. Well, that should be the excuse to stop talking to that driver, because you can see they're shaking up. They are emotionally charged. But I'm a police officer and I'm curious, professional curiosity. I need to get this investigated. Just tell me quickly what's happened. You're not under arrest or anything. I just need some quick comments. And your driver, and it doesn't matter how much of a history with the police or how many poor interactions with the police that driver's had in his past, every shred of body in his body will want to talk to the police to get his side across. And they'll say things like that. It's a bit of a daze, mate. I think I saw a cyclist, and when I turned, I heard this bang, and then, oh. And all of a time, that police officer's recording that. Policy says you have to be told the police officer's recording it. If you don't tell him, it's learning through reflection. It's not a breach of policy, and it doesn't make anything that has said go away. In that statement there, I think I saw the cyclist, then I felt a bang as I turned. Well, at the moment, where does this driver sit? Critical witness, victim or suspect? I say victim, because we're not ones to pass judgment. That's for the judicial process. However, I think I saw that cyclist and I carried on my manoeuvre. All of a sudden, that cyclist, that driver has just become a suspect for careless death, serious injury, etc., by careless driving. So when you're not a suspect and you're told by the police you're not a suspect, but you make a statement like that, all of a sudden you've done it. You've made a significant statement that cannot be undone. Doesn't matter how that police officer frames that, how friendly it comes across, you are being asked to account for your actions as something that is being investigated that may become an offence. That is an interview. It does not matter how you frame it. That is an interview. To interview someone, the law is really clear. You must be under caution. Don't have to say anything. We may harm your defence if you do not mention now, so which you later rely on in court. At the roadside, you have to be told, not under arrest, you're free to leave. And, critically, you are entitled to legal advice. Now, some companies may say, we've got XYZ, we've got CE Transport Law on retainer. We pick up the phone, hello, we've got one of your drivers. Worst case scenario, duty solicitor, cracking solicitors, a bit of shoplifting, low level assault, start talking to them about Road Traffic Act stuff, you'll hear a high-pitched whistle and a bang, that's the solicitor's head hitting the floor. This is not legal advice. This is a form of words that will protect your drivers. I'm willing to assist with your investigation. I'm going to help you. Absolutely, I'm going to help you. I want to help you. And I will answer your questions, happy days, after I've had legal advice. That is my right. Really hard for a driver having had a traumatic incident where someone is dead or dying, and unfortunately, with drivers, car drivers to HGV drivers, if someone is critically ill and the air ambulance are on doing their work and they're doing CPR, the best place where you can put the driver in the interim is back in the cab of their vehicle, so they're watching it. So it is a horrific traumatic experience. What I say and what I've done, and part of what I do is now as a road risk consultant, when I go out to people, I do future planning. What happens when the worst happens? Put that on a key ring or a QR code on an air freshener. So when your driver's having the worst day of their life, say to the police officer, scan that, mate, and that'll tell me what my company policy is, and it'll give you the link to my legal insurance. So Rob will take you through where we are with a police investigation.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, the police investigation, well, I've done just over 30 years in the police, so I do come at it with a little bit of knowledge, not too much, but just a little bit. So what does a police investigation look like? You've already heard it's a forensic, detailed investigation. So what sort of things are going to form part of that investigation? Well, all of that data that you can see on the screen there, the telematics data is one of the most valuable sources, isn't it? Because that tells us what the vehicle was doing at the time, what speed it was going, what direction it was travelling. But we're going to dig a lot deeper into it. Looking at training records, company policies. Have you got a drug and alcohol testing policy in place? If you have, is it robust? Maintenance history on your vehicles, defect reporting. How are those defects dealt with? Are they rectified? How are they signed off when they're rectified? Checking driving licences. That may seem like a really basic thing to do, but you'll be surprised how often people get driving licence checks wrong and miss basic little things, such as that driver's got to wear a pair of glasses when they're driving, but they never do. Looking at previous incident history. Has that driver been involved in anything previously? What was the level of that incident they were previously involved in? How many incidents? It goes on. It goes into a deep level of detail. So when the police turn up, they'll want to see maintenance records, whether that's digital on a computer, it might be some sort of filing system. We don't kid you when we say we have seen that on the left. We have seen Sainsbury's bag for life with maintenance records in no order whatsoever. We've seen the other end of the scale as well, where it's neatly arranged. Everything is easy to look through and trawl through. But critical thing is you need to be able to get your hands on those records when they're asked for, and you need to be able to produce those. You need to show that there are good systems in place. Because if you haven't got those good systems, and if your filing system looks like that picture on the left, is that going to put you in a difficult position when it comes to that investigation? Is it going to start and hone that police officer's senses to this is not a very good operator? I would suggest it is. Okay, so the interview room. Okay, we've seen that on the TV, haven't we? When someone sat there in one of those lovely grey tracksuits, they get given free of charge, and they're answering questions. So, I don't need a solicitor. It was an accident. Okay, you might have that belief that actually I've done nothing wrong, I don't need a solicitor. If I take a solicitor to an interview, which is sometimes a voluntary interview under caution, it's going to make me look guilty, isn't it? Because why would I need a solicitor if I've done nothing wrong? It's just going to make me look guilty. Wrong. If I go in with a solicitor, they might come down hard on me. I've got something to hide. No, not at all. If I was going into an interview under caution, if I was going into that voluntary interview to give my account, I'd be taking a solicitor with me all day long. And I know the legal system reasonably well. It doesn't mean you're guilty. It means you're looking after your rights, your entitlements. That legal professional will look after your legal rights and entitlements. They will interject if the police officer is overstepping the mark. I might have had a couple of solicitors interject in a couple of my interviews over the years, all right? It does happen. Why would I need a solicitor? I wasn't even driving. I'm the head of the fleet. Now, that's a shocking one, isn't it? As the head of the fleet, the transport manager, the director, you might just be called into that police station for a voluntary interview because actually it goes beyond what's happened at the roadside. It goes beyond the driver. It goes into the culture of the company, and we are potentially getting into the realms of corporate manslaughter offences, gross negligence manslaughter with company directors. So there's various people involved in that process. His Majesty's Coroner will oversee any death in the UK, which particularly has been suspicious, sudden, unexplained, a level of violence, and be under no illusion, a road death is a sudden, unexplained and violent death for somebody. Crown Prosecution Service will be involved in almost all decisions around charging of drivers, whether the threshold is met to charge a driver for offences. Now, that doesn't mean to say that every driver is charged. The vast majority of drivers aren't charged with offences because they've not done anything wrong. Health and Safety Executive, we know who they are, don't we? Vast powers. Health and Safety Executive are now starting to take a great deal of interest in road traffic matters that result in deaths. Okay, they're not just interested in what happens in yards. They are starting to look at what is happening out on the road. Why has that happened? What could have been done to prevent that? Is there a history of that person driving in a certain way which has been flagged and it has been ignored? If that happens, the HSE will take a particular interest. And there are live cases at the moment where the HSE are looking at those cases and they are monitoring the actions of the company. And then we've got the Office of the Traffic Commissioner, haven't we? Our favourite people. You better agree with that because there's one sitting at the front. Okay, but the Office of the Traffic Commissioner is rightly going to take an interest in a fatal or serious collision. They want to know if there's any culpability. Have there been failings in the system? Because you've all signed up to certain things that you're going to do. You're going to operate vehicles safely, aren't you? Okay, if you're not operating vehicles safely and people are coming to harm, the Traffic Commissioner will take an interest in that. So all of a sudden, it's not just the driver that might have been involved in that collision that is gripping the rail at the Crown Court in front of a jury of their peers. All of a sudden, in the dock, is the transport manager, the fleet head of compliance, company director, all those people that may be quite detached from the actual driving activity. All of a sudden, they're all in court, gripping the rail as well if there are failures. So I'll hand you back to Rick for this bit.
So after a serious or fatal collision, absolutely right. You're going to want answers in your own company to learn lessons. It's human nature. So you conduct your own investigation and you may start that. And you're going to have all this data available to you. Telematics data, CCTV, drug and alcohol tests, training discipline files. And you might even look at something and go, we're a little bit on edge on this one. I have a plan. I'm going to store it on my hard drive in a folder called Legal Privilege because I've watched CSI Miami, and if it's on yellow paper or it's in a folder called Legal Privilege, the old Bill can't touch it. So you store it in your Legal Privilege file. And we come in, and if you're a regulated fleet, we come in under various sections of the Transport Act, and we're like, what's in that folder? Oh, it's legally privileged, you can't look at it. Who directed you to conduct that investigation? what the head of fleet did. Open the folder for us, please. It is not legally privileged. However, product called Fleet Guard, it's come in through Carolyn Evans, and we'll speak about it in a minute, offers 3 layers of protection, and the really vulnerable layers of protection at the roadside, during the investigation and the interview. And they offer the levels of protection that will answer all those ambiguities. At the roadside, as I said, the really, really important thing is to get control of that driver. I'm not saying hide anything, we're saying get control of that driver, because they will make comments that actually it's just the chemicals in their brains firing off what they think they want to be heard actually didn't happen. So they will have an agreed form of words that will shut the police down from interviewing them at the roadside. I'm not saying they're not going to be interviewed, because they 100% are going to be interviewed. If a police officer is involved in a fatal or a serious collision, Section 170 is given, drug and alcohol tests are given, that police officer will not be questioned for at least 72 hours. That's not the police fudging the law, making it fit. That is within the law to allow for decompression. And then a structured interview with a legal professional will take place. Pre-prepared statement will be provided to the investigators. Driver will also be signposted to welfare support. Real passion of mine, and it came across the Toolbox Talks. Drivers are victims if they're involved in things like that. They're under stress. Some of the road safety charities will only look after the victim, as in the deceased or the injured person. When Rob and I spoke to a very well-known road safety charity about driver support, they signposted us to another charity. Their landing page is the sentencing guidelines for death by dangerous driving. So you literally log into this charity for some support and help, and it's like you're going to prison for life. You've killed someone. Go to hell. So, not brilliant. So, legal privilege. Our head of fleet is conducting their post-incident investigation, but this time they have engaged Fleet Guard. And a solicitor, there are other solicitors available apparently. As the solicitor says, I'm instructing you to conduct an investigation. Please report your findings to me. That is now a legally privileged investigation. Ultimately, training records, telematics and that will be released as part of the investigation. We can now control how they're released, because there is some stuff. Don't want to give everything, you want to give what's asked for. That is now legally privileged. Police station interview, as Rob said, watch police out 24 hours in police custody. They are not the most encouraging of environments, because not all of our service users are the most lovely of people. Interview under caution is intimidating. It's not designed to be, it's just intimidating to make sure all the legal points are covered off. That can be anyone involved in that collision, the operating, the compliance to the purchase of the vehicle can be interviewed. So, finally from us, thank you. Why do you wear a seatbelt? Your drivers are very fragile individuals, much as they'd like to not think they are. They can break. Transport managers, for the transport managers in the room, how many of you have woken up in the morning and go, why on earth did I do that CPC? I'll tell you tomorrow when I get my results. Company directors, they may sit in their lovely office in their leather recliner chair thinking, don't worry about this, the head of fleet's got this, the head of fleet's got compliance managers, got transport managers, it's never coming back to me. That director should sign off every single company policy. Every high-risk driver should have a director's signature on it, why that driver is still driving. Ultimately, it comes down to your profit. Corporate reputation, all of it. If you have bad drivers that are using the rear of their vans as parking sensors, or certain companies that like to wedge their lorries under bridges daily, corporate reputation dictates how you survive in the industry. So you don't wear a seatbelt because you're going to go out and have an accident. You wear a seatbelt, if you have an accident, it limits the amount of damage that you do. And that is exactly what this does. Chris? How's that one? It works.
We try.
There you go.
Hello. Okay. So you've had a talk from the old Bill, and now you'll have a talk from the legal perspective. I, over the years, have prosecuted and defended serious and fatal road traffic collisions. And as such, I've dealt with the aftermath. I've dealt with drivers. I've been on the other side. I've had to deal with families. And hopefully this shorter presentation, because you all look very hungry, will explain and explore some of those things. So firstly, when I was looking at this presentation and the conference as a whole, future-proofing, that's the theme. And the phrase that you see on the screen now, I thought fitted very well, especially with the Fleet Guard product, in that essentially what you are doing is mitigating risk. And why is that important? Well, we all have things that are important to us. In every other walk of life, we protect them. We have insurance. But one of our most important assets, often our drivers, because they keep our business turning, are left out. And as such, why would you not protect them? So when you look at why it is important, well, it's to ensure that you protect what you have, your business, and your reputation. So who's at risk? Well, everybody, essentially. I can see some chuntering at the front there. They would agree. So who's at risk? Everybody, essentially. It's not just company directors. It's not just drivers. Everybody that's involved in the operation is at risk, especially where there's serious injury, fatality. And that it's not only confined to RTCs. You've heard from these guys that health and safety are taking a much wider interest, especially in HGVs and road deaths. So what you first need to do is understand that exposure to the risk, and you have to understand the consequences and put in place a system, much like we would for the rest of compliance, to ensure ultimately that we are protected. So what's the consequences? Well, the consequences aren't just confined to that particular day. They're confined to, or not confined, should I say, to that particular day. They're confined to a long period of time, and in fact go on for many years. The ripple effect goes out from drivers to their families, and of course, for those that have lost, unfortunately, lives and been seriously injured and their life changed forever. But what that potentially does to drivers is results in a loss of liberty. And it's not just those drivers, as I say, directors, etc., are often in the firing line. And one such case that when I was doing my research for this popped up was one of R versus Holgate. Now, this particular case was on the M62, and this highlights really the consequences. We've heard that there's life imprisonment available for these offences. But what was particularly poignant in relation to this case is you'll see the director there got 15 years imprisonment. That's hard time. He's many, many years away from his family, seeing his children for an hour a week, perhaps, during visiting time. In this particular case, it was a truck carrying a mobile home. Unfortunately, there was an issue with the brakes that the driver reported. He was instructed to carry on, which was a fatal mistake in relation to this particular collision. The vehicle went through the central reservation and killed 2 people. And of course, you can see there, that driver, he didn't go out in that morning intending there to be a collision. He didn't go out to intentionally harm anybody, but he got 6 years imprisonment. There's often a disconnect between the punishment in relation to these cases and the consequence being far more than 6 years. And many of you may look at that and say, well, 6 years, that's not very long for a life. But actually, we also have to correlate that to culpability. And of course, nobody goes out with that intention. Furthermore, the company is also at risk. We often think, well, it's never going to happen to us. It's going to be confined to the driver. And we put it to the back of our minds. But of course, companies are more and more, as I have outlined, being taken to prosecution by HSE in particular. And that can result in high legal costs, and it can result in very, very hefty fines. Examples of that you'll see on the screen. We're not talking pennies, we're talking millions of pounds. Both of those particular cases are recent. Both of them involved HGVs and pedestrians. So we're talking about millions of pounds that it could cost your business. And the other thing to note is that those fines aren't based on your profit. They'll look at your turnover. And so those sums could quite easily put most businesses out of business and into liquidation. So common problems. A lot of the time what happens is something happens. I won't use Rick's example because it almost involved a swear word. But what happens is something goes wrong and there is no clear plan. There's no responsibility, there's no emergency response, and the drivers are often unsupported. And so what happens is, during the start of that investigation, which can often shape where the case goes, whether it continues or whether or not other action is taken and it's perhaps not pursued, is there's no rudder, there's nobody steering it, there's nobody taking responsibility, and of course the driver's left to their own device, which ultimately ends up with an outcome that nobody would want. So how do we combat that? Well, we put in place procedures and we make sure that we are covered, which is where Fleet Guard comes in. So the first thing that Fleet Guard does is ultimately, sorry, I'm being told to hurry up. The first thing that Fleet Guard does is trains the drivers, trains the directors and anybody that's involved in the business so they know exactly what they're supposed to do. The next stage is to provide ring-fenced, legally privileged investigation, 24-hour emergency support line for the driver, and also, finally, which is the bit we're most proud of, supports the driver. There's counselling involved and signposting if further assistance is required, but ultimately, that is one part that's definitely lacking in the industry. As has already been said, there is no support out there for a driver that's involved because they are the suspect. They're the one that's caused it. And of course, they deserve to be supported as well. That system that's in place promotes long-term resilience. And I'm going to end there.